I always like to have something fresh for a reading if it's at all possible, and since last Sunday was Father's Day, I wrote this poem that has to do with my dad. And like a lot of people in arts in my generation, our dad served in the Second World War. And so this is about that. But it takes place somewhat later. It's called War Games 1953, and the subscript is Father's Day 2013. So it was, I wrote this on the 60th anniversary. It's mildly scatological, but you all have children here, so I trust no one will be shocked. Before the bowl, a little boy directs a stream down on the dozen floating butts encountered in the bathroom. The flotilla he imagines, blasted one by one with pinpoint aim, explodes its paper hulls and leaves tobacco wreckage in its place. Blind god of war, he lords it over them. He sees it finally, after 60 years. The cigarettes were Camels. So his dad had hidden every day and smoked upstairs. Less than a decade then after the war, he never spoke of the Pacific Theater, his time in Fiji or Guadalcanal. Since his malaria attacks had stopped some years after his marriage, he had led what looked to be a normal life. What secrets kept him pacing in a narrow room alone, pitching a bowl full of spent butts, inflict arc after arc into the water through smoke and silence, far from sympathy? It didn't actually take me 60 years to figure that out, but it took me until I was an adult, and I just had this memory. And then I thought about, when would you ever see 20 cigarettes in a bowl, not flushed? Just, it would take you, how long would it take, even those of you who are smokers, how long would it take you to smoke that many cigarettes? I don't know why I'm pointing at you. Anybody who's been a smoker, because I never have.
2 days, anyway. At least. A day and a half.
Well, not for my dad. He was a 3-pack-a-day Camel smoker.
Yeah, 60. That's 60.
Yeah, so there were probably a dozen or 15. So.
But it takes a poet or somebody with an artistic imagination of some kind to put that together at any age and to figure out that in order for those things to land in the bowl there had to be somebody pitching them.
Yeah.
With a lot of time on his hands.
I will never know what was going through his mind, but you know, it's a commonplace truth that our dads didn't talk much about their experiences. And it's true of people in wars to this day. So I thought it would have some resonance for people, even if you don't happen to be males.
Did that image come after the strapping, when you were strapped?
Well, I always remembered when I was strapped. I was strapped when I was probably about 7. And I believe this is dated when we first moved to that house, which I was 5. So yes, it did predate it.
Predate?
Yeah.
Haven't we just put a name to it now, that we're able to talk about PTSD?
Yeah, it never had a name.
No.
You know,
Well,
how many of those people had nothing to call it and no one to understand?
It was shell shocked.
Yeah.
And I never knew what, it was never described.
It was never mentioned,
Yeah.
especially World War II.
Exactly.
Well, you know,
You met my husband now. You met him in
Yes.
Manchester. Well, he's a very jovial, genial guy. He's
Yes.
always laughing and cracking jokes. Well, when we were first married, it was at least 2 years. Oh, more than that. I think the children were already old enough to ask questions. before he said something serious about the war.
Right.
Up to that point, everything had been humorous. You know, he would talk about all the funny, ridiculous things.
Sure.
And this one got drunk, and that one got drunk, and so forth. But after, something in him seemed to calm down enough so
Yes.
that he could answer a question seriously. And then the fact came out that he had sat in a field where the Nazi tanks were squashing the bodies, and he would eat his lunch with this going on. And it's very hard for a civilian like me to figure out how you're going to survive such a thing. So of course that's why the people like your father or like my husband didn't want to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's been our experience in general.
When you think that, you know, we were born short years after our fathers came home.
That's partly what this is about. That I didn't think about that when I was a boy because I was busy being a boy. But it was in the early and the mid and the late 50s. It was less than 10 years since these experiences. And when I look back at things that happened 10 years ago, that's pretty recent in my memory. So that began to give me a little bit of an insight into why our dads behaved the way that they did. But it wasn't until it took that image to crystallize it, to give me a way to say it, that made some sense to me.
The business of honoring your parents and your relatives, I'm more convinced than ever, is best expressed with things that they would perhaps not like you to hold up about them.
Yeah.
And you really are honoring them by putting their complications.
Yes, I think so.
before us. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, it's not.
Appreciate that very much.
These are wonderful poems. These are wonderful poems.
Well, thank you. This